Hello everybody and welcome to, excuse me, a brand new Elder Scrolls Online video with me, Sherman. Sorry about that, guys. Had to clear my throat a little bit. Didn't realize I needed it. So let's get right into it. This is the Shadow Ward. This is the solo Nightblade stamina build. And I will be honest, I've been getting a lot of people asking, can you make, you know, like the stamina version of the DK? Can you make a... you know, stamina Sork version. And honestly, guys, the easiest way I can tell you to do that is just use the same gear sets that I use for other builds, for other solo builds, and it'll work with any class. Just as long as you keep the health and the main pool is like the health around 25k and the rest of it around just maximizing the rest. So it's really just about that. And I know a lot of people get confused by that, but it's the truth. I mean, you can't really do much with a solo build outside of maximizing. So it's always going to end up being about the same kind of setup. So like if you're playing a stamina version, you want endurance with like with like Hunting's Rage, Night Mother's Gaze. You can even go Vicious Ophidian if you want, but your resistances will be really low. If you're gonna go Vicious Ophidian and you're gonna go solo, go Sword and Shield. So that way you can get the greater resource, you know, like resistances, because you just need about 20k physical and like just about 20k spell resistance somewhere in there. If you can, you know, like if you can get your physical resistance about 19-20 and then spell a little bit higher, you'll be fine, honestly. And like the skills you choose to use is really just determined by how you play the build. So, but here we are, the Nightblade. So again, solo builds are used for delves, public dungeons, world bosses. They're used for farming, mainly farming gear sets, farming overland sets, you know, like farming overland sets, farming delves for stuff, farming dolmens, farming world bosses, farming resources even. You know, it just gives you that ability to play without that hindrance of, oh god, am I going to die anytime soon kind of thing when you play like a DPS. You know, a lot of people can play DPS and be fine. Some people like that greater survivability so they can just solo things. And that's what solo builds allow. So let's get into the Shadow Ward. So right out the door you can see we have 26k health with a 29k stamina. Now we are a red guard on this build, and it's kind of interesting, like the build really turned out better than I thought when it came to the Nightblade. The Nightblade is actually the better of the solo builds when it comes to damage dealing. But you can switch out from like dual wield to two-handed if you want to get that brawler in there to give you a little bit more survivability. But the Nightblade has some pretty good healing stuff, so. But as you can see, 1600 stamina recovery, 2747 weapon damage with a 41% crit. Now, 20k spell, 19k physical. We are running the Lady Munda Stone for the extra resistances. Like I said, you want to make a build that's soloable, you want to be survivable, so using the Lady Munda Stone is really important. We do have major savagery from having expert hunter on both bars, and we are running dubious Cameron throw. Onto the gear. So very similar to some of my other solo builds, we are running two-piece Veladrith with this set. Now Veladrith can be kind of hard to get. If you don't have Veladrith, run Krogs with this build. Krogs is really easy to get, Veladrith is a little bit harder. But if you want to get Veladrith, just make a tank. Honestly, just make a tank, run that dungeon, or make a healer, or make a DPS. Run that dungeon until you can get Veladrith in medium helm, heavy shoulder. And once you do, you'll see why it works out really good for this build. So the setup on the gear is 3 infused, the rest is 2 reinforced, 2 Nirnhoned for the greater resistance amount. So on the helm, the chest, and legs, we are running infused tri-stat glyphs. Now these are like max, like in-game solo builds. These aren't ones that you know, like, you can progress into them, which is fine, but these are really just in-game solo builds made for soloing, like I said, farming gold, farming resources, farming drop gear sets, and they work really good at that. So 3 infused with tri-stats, and then the shoulders and the boots you want to make sure are reinforced with stamina enchants, and then the gauntlets and the belt. You want the belt light, but you want them both Nirnhoned and heavy gauntlets. The medium helm and belt work out to be the best. If you go with medium gauntlets and a heavy helm, you do get a little bit more resistance, but overall this is better for what it does. So, alright. So like I said, reinforced, Nirnhoned, light, medium. You can go medium gloves, heavy helm, it's up to you. But this just works out really well. So we are running a 5-piece Hunting's Rage for the increased weapon damage. For this build, it just works out really well because we are using an ability that gives us major fracture. So we don't need major breach because we're not tanking. So we just need that major fracture to give us extra penetration. Now we are running, like I said, a skill that does that. Down here we are running 3-piece endurance with 2 weapon damage, 1 stamina recovery. Now this jewelry is most likely going to be purple on the live servers. Don't stress it. It still works out. So it's still a really good set. And make sure you run 2 gold weapon damage enchants and a gold stam recovery on it. Alright, moving on to the weapons. Now these are gonna be the hard part. Getting Master Maelstrom. Now these are the only builds I'm releasing this update with Master Maelstrom setups. And onto the dual wield, we are running Master Dual Wield. Now if you look at what Master Dual Wield sets does, it increases the bleed damage Twin Slashes deals by 1500 each tick. So each tick that Twin Slashes bleed is applied, the bleed itself is increased by 1500. This does an immense amount of damage. So that's why we're running the Master Dual Wield here. Now, moving down here to the bow, we are running a Maelstrom bow, but if you don't have access to a Maelstrom bow, you can run a Master bow or just a crafted bow until you can get the Maelstrom bow. This build can solo like a beast, and it can solo the Maelstrom Arena, so even with just a regular bow or a Master bow. Now, Master weapons are going to be a little bit harder to come by because you're going to have to run it several times to get 2, and you do want a sword and axe, not a dagger and an axe, a sword and axe. The reason you want the sword is for the 2.5% extra damage it does, and you want the axe for the chance of bleeding. This build works really good like this. So on the Maelstrom bow, the main reason why you want the Maelstrom bow and a Master bow will work as well, but you want the Maelstrom bow for the extra damage volley does. So we'll get to that in a second. Now on the axe here, we are running a Crusher enchant. On this one, we're running a Disease enchant, and this one we are running a weapon damage enchant. Now a lot of people are going to ask, why aren't you running poison? The main reason why I'm not running poison, Nightblades have a lot of disease abilities, so running disease actually helps with the Nightblade just by a small amount. And that's because most, like I said, a lot of their abilities do disease damage. Not physical damage, but disease. So, alrighty. So let's get into the skills. So as I've said in all my other builds, when it comes to passives, just make sure you fill in all the passives of your class. It doesn't matter if you're using skills or not. Make sure you fill in the passives. Onto the weapon side, always get your passives maxed out. When it comes to armor, especially this build, you want to run 5-1-1 setup. So 5 heavy, 1 medium, 1 light. With the light armor passives, you want to make sure you get all 3. Medium armor, get the top 2 and the bottom 1. I made a mistake with this build in the beginning. I made it a medium armor build, and then it worked, but you had to run a different monster set with it, and I didn't like how that worked. Moving on to heavy armor, make sure you get all the passives, especially for this build, heavy. Soul Magic, get these 2. On Fighters Guild, make sure you get all the Fighters Guild passives because you are running a lot of Fighters Guild stuff, so you want to make sure that they really work out for you. And then medium, or the Mage's Guild, you only need the 1 Persuasive Will, and that's just for questing. Undaunted, make sure you get the bottom 2. And if you are going to tank with this build in dungeons, because you can tank normal dungeons with this, and it makes speed clearing really easy. Like, speed clearing normal dungeons really easy. And most vet dungeons can be tanked with this build, if your group allows it, for faster clears of, like, the Path 1 dungeons, most of the Path 2 dungeons, and a few of the DLC dungeons. And you can use Inner Beast. And the place you're going to put Inner Beast is on the back bar here. You're going to take out Rearming Trap and just put Inner Beast there for your taunt. And like I said, this build will work in the veteran dungeons. Not all of them really well. Like, Chuden Dungeon can be, like, the Ruins of Mazatoon can be a little rough. Imperial City Prison can be a little rough. I'm trying to think of the other one from between Bloodroot and the Falkreath Hold can be really rough. And with the new dungeons, the Skullcaller Peak, I think it is. It's either Skullcaller. Let me see. I'll tell you which one it is. Not Skullcaller. It is Fanglair. Fanglair can be really, Skullcaller can be really tough. Fanglair is pretty easy with this build. So you just have to know, like, what dungeons this build will work in and stuff like that. Now, when it comes to trials, this build can tank normal trials if your group allows it. But again, I'll say this, and I want to be clear: don't try it unless you know the build really, really well. And like I said, normal trials, it's fine. There's some of the normal trials are just too easy to be done with, like, a bunch of, like, having more of an off-tank DPS character, and this is what can do that. So, alrighty. So, like I said about the passives, Alliance War, if you can get it, get Resolving Vigor. It is super, super important. If you don't have Resolving Vigor, you can use the Siphoning ability, Swallow Soul. It's not as good of a heal as Vigor, but it'll help until you can get Vigor. On to Redguard skills, and if you are going to tank in-game, make sure you get Aggressive Warhorn, because it's essential to a lot of in-game stuff, and that's going to really help your group, and you're going to put it on the back bar. So, alright, racial skills. Make sure you fill in all the racials, and yes, the Redguard is the best for this. I tried the Khajiit. The Khajiit gets great crit and everything, but it doesn't get that good stamina pool that we need for this build to work really good. So Redguard is a lot better for this particular build. Moving on to ground, and if you want, also, you can run Sword and Shield with this build, which is really cool because you can drop the Blood Craze, and you can drop this Surprise Attack, and just on the back bar here, move these over and put the Fighters Guild, or not Fighters Guild, Heavy Armor passive or buff here for your resistances. Don't worry about any class ones, just put the Fighters Guild on the back bar, run Sword and Shield. You can run Pierce Armor here, Heroic Slash, and this build still works even in dungeons, like, really well. So, and I'll always keep the bow on the back bar. Alright, crafting. I always do this, like medicinal use and alchemy, get it because you want those potions to last longer, and then provisioning, gourmand, and connoisseur. Now, you're not going to be using a lot of potions when you're doing solo play unless you're having resource issues, but you won't. This build is made to be self-sustaining. So, alright, so I'm going to go ahead and go over the skills real quick. On the main bar, we are running Blood Craze. Now, this is a great heal over time for you. It does decent amount of damage up front, nice damage over time. Next up, we are running Spiked Bone Shield. This is our main mitigation resource, like, ability. That's why it can be really rough on you, and you need that greater return of resources from your heavy attacks, so you can keep Bone Shield active really good. Next up, we are running Surprise Attack for Major Breach, or Major Fracture, sorry, and the damage that this does. This is an incredibly powerful damage ability, and it does keep Major Fracture on there for 17 seconds. You can go stealth with this, but you're not going to be doing that, so don't worry about the bottom part, just the upper part. Now, the other great thing about this ability is when you use it, it goes off of your main hand weapon, so it can apply the Crusher enchant you have on the main hand. So you can get double that extra penetration. Next up, we have Resolving Vigor. Probably the best heal you can have for this build. Now, it does heal for a lot, and plus Blood Craze, the two of them together, can pretty much keep you surviving everything. Next up, we have Evil Hunter. Evil Hunter is here just for the crit. Okay, now it is also good because of the extra weapon damage it applies. Because we have Dawnbreaker here and this here, we actually get 6% or 8% more weapon damage on the front bar. And then when we swap to the back bar, which we'll get to in a second, I'll show you how the damage changes. So we have Dawnbreaker here for the extra weapon damage and the just massive amount of damage output this has. You always want this ability on your character, even if you're tanking, because it just helps clear stuff so much faster. And this is a 10-meter cone, so it shoots out 10 meters in front of you. Anything in that 10 meters is going to take this damage. Onto the back bar. Now on the back bar we have 2 extra fighter skill abilities, so we get 6% more weapon damage on the back bar. And if you look at our weapon damage when we swap, it's not a massive difference. Now our weapon critical goes up on the back bar, which is really, really good. So, little itch in my eye. Alright, so we have Rearming Trap. Now, Rearming Trap is a great ability because it increases our critical damage. And with this build, we want that critical damage. So, anytime you do a crit, you're going to get extra damage, and you're going to want to keep this up all the time. Now, if you want to swap this out for something, I'm gonna show you guys a little secret here. So with the Nightblade, what you can do is you can swap this to the back bar, where the Rearming Trap is, and you can put Killer Blade on the front bar, right here. And this is going to give you a little bit greater crit stuff on the front bar. Now, if you want to also get rid of that Killer Blade, or this right here, on the back bar where this is, you can put the Assassination ability, Mark Target, which applies both Major Breach and Major Fracture, and this is really good in dungeons. Now, if you are going to be tanking in a dungeon, remove Poison Injection and put your taunt there, and use Mark Target. So just get, and I like this one, Reaper's Mark, because when the enemy dies, you get healed. And it's kind of nice. So you get healed for 57% of your max health, and you gain Major Berserk, increasing your damage done by 25% for 5 seconds. Both of those are really good. So, and then, like I said, Killer Blade, if you want it, you can have it on the front bar. And as I said, a lot of the Nightblade abilities are disease-based. Now, if you do not have Dawnbreaker, I would suggest using this until you get Dawnbreaker, because this will do it reduces the enemy's healing received. It does really good damage, and it also, any damage done within the 6 seconds of after it's applied, you get 20% more damage. So it can be really good for you in the short term until you can get Dawnbreaker. Alrighty, so yeah, but it's just a simple manipulation of stuff here. And then if you do that, drop Mirage. I know Mirage is a great ability, but drop it and get the heavy armor passive and put it in its place, so you have that resistance buff, because you're not going to have this on your bar anymore. So, but you can leave it like this, and then on the back bar you can swap these 2 abilities out, like I said. Put Mark Target here, and put the taunt here, or you can put the taunt here and just leave this here. It's really up to you. There's so many options with this build. I can't even tell you them all. But yeah, really good build, and really good skills. So Rearming Trap, really good. Next we have Poison Injection. This does a good damage up front and good damage over time, and it's considered an execute kind of when the enemy's below 50% health. It does increase damage over time. Next up we have Endless Hail, and this is the other reason why we have the Maelstrom Bow, but a Master Bow will work just as well until you can get a Maelstrom Bow. And it really good damage, AoE, damage. So next we have Mirage. This gives us minor ward and minor resolve, increasing both spell and physical resistance by 1320, and gives us a chance to dodge attacks at a 15%, and it lasts 26 seconds. So try to keep this up as much as you can. Next up we have Evil Hunter, again, increased critical, and then Toxic Barrage. Toxic Barrage, when you're playing solo, is an uber ability. Does a ton of damage up front, over 4.1 seconds, does 36,000 damage, and then after Barrage ends, the enemy's poisoned for another 8 seconds for 28,040 over those 8 seconds. So it doesn't tick for 28,000, it does damage like that. So either one, you have Dawnbreaker and you have Toxic Barrage. If you're single targeting enemies, use this. If you're fighting a boss, use this. If you're fighting in a dungeon, use this. Like if you're fighting a lot of mobs at once, use Dawnbreaker, because then it applies to all of them. Toxic Barrage is more single target. And they both cost about the same amount in Ultimate. One's 125, the other's 175. And it doesn't take you long to get there. So before we go and face this nice, lovely boss over here, we are going to take a look at the champion points. So onto the champion points, we do have 37 in Ironclad, reducing our direct damage taken by 15%. We have 37 in Thick Skin, reducing our damage over time by 15%. We have 43 into Hardy, reducing physical, poison, disease damage by 10%. 43 into Elemental Defender, reducing Flame Frost, Shock, and Magic damage by 10%. And yes, they do stack with these other things. By the way, Lightning Staff hitting you is considered damage over time, which is weird. But it is reduced by Thick Skin. So, and just the Lightning Staff and the Resto Staff can be affected by this. They're not, that's only on their heavy attacks, by the way. Fire Staff and Ice Staff are considered direct damage. So, and yes, I did test this. I wanted to make sure. So, moving on over here, we have 16 in Expert Defender. This reduces light and heavy attacks by 10%. Most enemies in the game, yes, they do direct damage. Lots of direct damage. But they also do mostly, and I would say at least 60%, if not 70% of their attacks are light and heavy. So having this helps reduce the mitigation of your damage by a better amount in some cases. Next up we have 56 in Bastion. This increases our damage shields. We do run a damage shield to mitigate the majority of our damage. That's what Bone Shield's there to do. So next up we have 8 in the Quick Recovery. This increases our healing received by 2%. Now, we are wearing 5 pieces of heavy. With the 5 pieces of heavy and this 2%, we get a 10% healing received. That's why if you use the Nightblade's heal, the funnel health thing with the 8% healing received, that's a little bit better because it gives you 18% healing received, making the heal from that just a little bit more effective for you. So that's why you can use it until you can resolve in Vigor. Moving over here, we have 23 into Warlord. This reduces the cost to break free by 10%. Bashing Focus, reduce the cost of bash by 10% with 16 points. We have 75 into Mooncalf, increasing our stamina recovered by 14%. And if you didn't know, Nightblades actually have a passive, and I want to say it's in the Shadow Tree. Yes. Increases health, stamina, and magic recovery by 15%. They are the only class that get all 3 recoveries, and they get a large amount of all of recoveries, the highest of any of the classes, in fact. So this is why it's really good to build into resource management with them, the higher recovery rates with them, because they get so much extra that the other classes don't. Like, Templars don't get 10% stamina, health, and magic recovery unless they slot something. Sorks get 10% magic recovery. DKs get no recovery. Wardens get 15% stamina and health, or stamina and magic recovery. But they have to have an animal ability slotted to get it. So each class is different in its own way, but the Nightblade is definitely the most sustainable when it comes to recovery. So, just saying why I have so many points in there. Alright, moving on. We have 43 into Tenacity. This will increase our stamina return from fully charged heavy attacks. Since we're wearing 5 pieces of heavy, we get a 25% with it. This is another 10%, and we get a base. Everybody does. Has a base return of 30%. So this makes it 65% of our total recovery. So I'm going to show you guys this real quick so people understand. Recovery rate is based on your heavy attacks. This right here, you get this every 2 seconds. Your heavy attacks is a percentage of this amount. So that's 65%. I get 65% extra of 1696. So that 1696, I get 65% extra on top of it. And then when I do my heavy attack, I get both the 2-second recovery, because it takes 2 seconds to do a heavy attack. You'll get the 2-second recovery, plus you get that hit of recovery, which is that 1696 plus the 65. So you get a huge amount of back with this. So you can basically self-sustain forever through heavy attacks with this build. Moving on, over here we have 56 in the Shadow Ward, 23 in the Tumbling, and 4 in the Befoul. Now we have 56 in the Shadow Ward because we are a solo build, so we do block attacks. So having that reduced cost saves us resources. 23% in the dodge roll. We get 20% from wearing 5 pieces of medium armor, but we also get 4% from wearing 1 piece of medium armor. So we actually get a 14% reduced cost in dodge rolling. The 4 into Befoul is if you're using anything like that has major defile. Now you can put this 4 points if you want over here into like Sprinter or Bashing Focus, whatever you really want. I just dump it here because I do use Befoul stuff. Alright, moving on to the blue tree. We have 35 into Physical Weapon Expert. This increases our light and heavy attacks by 20 or 35 or 20% with 35 points, and then Master at Arms we have 56 with 20%, increasing our direct damage by 20%. Now I want to say this. Anything like, say, like take for example Twin Slashes. Twin Slashes has a hit up front and then damage over time. That damage up front, that first hit, is affected by the direct damage. That is direct damage. The damage over time is affected by thaumaturge. So we'll get to that in a second. So that's why we have 56 points in here, is increase that damage potential. Now moving on to the final part, we have 43 into Mighty. This increases physical, poison, and disease damage by 10%. Now somebody has asked me, and I even showed it on my thing, why are you using a disease damage thing on the glyph? This is why. Because Nightblades already get disease damage abilities. I'm going to utilize what they get at advantage too. Because they use disease damage, I'm going to use the advantage of this to give that disease glyph a little bit more damage. Now I could use a poison glyph, but honestly, disease is fine, because poison and disease both have negative impacts on the enemy. Alrighty, 51 in a Thaumaturge. This increases your damage done with damage over time abilities by 19%. So when I showed you that Twin Slash, that 9,000 bleed damage, that's what this is. It's affected by is this and this. So that bleed is increased by 10% plus another 19. That's 29% increase. Now we have 51 into Precise Strikes. This increases our critical strike damage and our critical healing from stamina abilities. We are running Resolving Vigor, which is a critical is a heal, and can critically heal me based on this. With that Rearming Trap, though, it gives me 10% more critical damage. So altogether, I get a 29% critical damage increase and a 19% increase in healing effect. So really, really powerful stuff here. And I know a lot of people will be like, well, it's not that powerful. Well, I beg to differ. And the last 4 points, just put it into the piercing to increase your physical penetration. And don't worry about anything else for now. So let's go ahead and see this build in action. Start with Mirage. We're going to use Rearming Trap first, out the door as soon as you get close. Then hit that, and then pretty much you just want to keep things going. Like I said, when you're facing a lot of enemies, Dawnbreaker is great. And my Crusher's not getting applied for some reason. Or it's just not showing. No, it's getting applied. It's just not showing. I'm gonna try and get it to pop off that thing, but it's not working. It was working earlier, guys. Promise you. But as you can see, it works out really well. It doesn't do a whole lot of damage. 13k, 14k DPS right now. And I didn't let my poison arrow thing work like it was supposed to. Maybe this time around, when I get to back around to it, I'll get it to work. And as you saw there, that thing went down really fast once I got that toxic thing put on it. And it was below a certain percentage of health, but it just helps out to have something that can do a little bit more damage to enemies in the long run. And that's why I use Toxic Barrage. Works out really good on the DK and Nightblade. So it works out on all the other classes too, but not quite as well as the DK and Nightblade, to be honest. So that, guys, is the Shadow Ward. That is the Nightblade solo build for Dragon Bones DLC. Now, I have been asked if I'm going to update any builds later down the road, and I do want to be honest with you guys. My solo builds, I'm just going to update like pretty much the champion points when it comes around to that time. I'm just going to show you, because the gear itself still works great. The gear setups do. So the gear setups don't need to change. We just need to change champion points. Everything else can be left alone, honestly, because nothing's going to change with that. Just the champion points will change in the next few updates, or over the next several updates. And those you can manipulate and play with and do all kinds of stuff with. So you don't have to use the champion point setup I do use. You can use your own. I just prefer this one because it works out better in the long run. And that's it. So if you guys like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me or more builds by me, you can hit that subscribe button. And I do want to let some people know there's 2 more builds, solo builds, I'm going to be releasing this week. Magicka Templar solo build and a Magicka Warden solo build. They were requested by 2 of you who watch my channel. I don't know your names right off the bat, but trust me, I remember. And I want to get those builds done for you guys. So they will be coming out tomorrow. I'm going to release them back to back, just like I did with the last week with the healers and the support, and then the week before with the tanks. I'm going to do that again this week, but only for Saturday, those 2 builds. So that's it. So thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, have a wonderful day. And this guy might see you in game. Bye.